Hi and welcome to another review from Movie Soundscapes. I'm James Welch and today I'm going to be talking to you about a pretty recent film, at the time of this recording anyway, Batman vs Superman Dawn of Justice, directed by Zack Snyder of course. Now following on from Man of Steel, which was composed by Hans Zimmer, this time much in the way that his Dark Knight trilogy, certainly first two films anyway, where Zimmer had a co-credit with another composer, which of course in that instance was James Newton Howard. This time Junkie XL is also co-credited as the composer, also known of course as Tom Holkenberg, and there's no secret in soundtrack circles or music circles that the two of them have worked together before, and including on Man of Steel, but this is the first time where Junkie XL has come to the fore as much as Hans Zimmer, and you can hear it in the soundtrack itself. Now, I'll admit that it's taken me a little while to fully embrace the world of Hans Zimmer, and not that I think he's a bad composer or anything like that. Far from it. There's a little bit of a feeling in sort of soundtrack circles or soundtrack enthusiasts, I suppose you'd call it, film score enthusiasts, that and this is maybe more of a topic for another time to go more in depth, which I will do a video for soon, is that music scores nowadays, a lot of them anyway, and more often than not, lack, certainly in terms of big Hollywood films, lack the more lyrical, melodic content of films from yesteryear. And I mean composers like Jerry Goldsmith, John Williams, and they're the two most obvious ones. Of course, John Williams is still thankfully still recording new music now, but he's very much from a sort of bygone era where the scores were really built around strong themes that often reoccurred in the film in different guises. Music nowadays film score music a lot of the time nowadays doesn't have that job, or it doesn't. The composers don't really go that way. Now, of course, Hans Zimmer is one of those sort of examples where he sort of helped. It sounds a bit too much against Hans Zimmer, but it's not. It's just the way that the film and music has changed over the years. But he certainly with his Batman scores, for example, really introduced a new sort of style of film music recording or film music in itself, and that was a very sort of heavy-hitting, bombastic sort of impact music, and by that I mean the sort of what's become known as the bum 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 bum, all that sort of stuff, really strong, or sort of the big boom that you hear in Inception, and has been used for trailers constantly and that type of thing. Now, Man of Steel, I thought was a very good score in the end. I thought that Zimmer tapped into a nice, actually had a strong, nice theme for Superman that started off very gentle, and then it became stronger as the film went on, and yes, it was very action-packed, of course, but I liked Man of Steel. It took a lot of listens. There's a heavy percussion element which Zimmer was going for, and but overall I warmed to the score the more I listened to it. I certainly wouldn't say it's one of my favourite scores at all, but certainly I have had repeated listens and a lot of joy in listening to it. So with Batman vs Superman, and I'm just reaching down here because I have the vinyl of it that was released by I think it's the Dutch company Music on Vinyl, in a limited edition, 5,000 copies. This one's number 88, and it's a lovely deluxe 3-disc trifold LP is what they call it. And I wanted to get it. I mean, I'm a big fan of vinyl anyway, but Music on Vinyl do a lot of good vinyl soundtrack releases. They've released some others that I will review at some point. So, but the thing with this, with Dawn of Justice, is that with Junkie XL being more at the forefront, if anything, this is even more heavy-hitting, bombastic film score than what went before. It isn't cram-packed full of melody. And in fact, the only real, what I'd call a proper theme, there's two themes in it I think that reoccur that are obvious, and that is the reuse of the Superman theme from Man of Steel, which thankfully does reappear in this film, and also the best piece of music in the film undoubtedly is the theme, a more sort of tribal theme that Zimmer came up with for Wonder Woman. So the scene in the film, if you've seen it, where Wonder Woman appears during the battle with Doomsday at the end, and she's a real sort of strong force in that battle. The music's fantastic. Really one of the best compositions that I've heard Zimmer, and of course, well, with Junkie XL's help, come up with. Really brilliant stuff, and I listen to that track a lot. The rest of the soundtrack, in terms of pure listening experience, is a bit hit and miss. I think for the film itself, I think it works, and that of course is the primary job of any soundtrack to a film. So in that respect, it's a success. Listening to it on its own, you wouldn't get as much. Going back through superhero scores of yesterday, of all the, going way back to the John Williams scores, but of things like Superman and everything else. But this is a different era now, so it's unfair really to compare them to those. But in amongst the sort of Marvel universe as well, so the Brian Tyler scores of things like Avengers, Age of Ultron, and Iron Man 3, and then you've got Alan Silvestri as Captain America, you've got Henry Jackman's follow-up score for that, and of course Civil War now. I think it holds up pretty well. It all really comes down to the fact of, and it is very different to those scores, so that's a good thing. It comes down ultimately to whether you like Hans Zimmer's style and whether you like Junkie XL. And basically, if you do like those composers and like the work they've done, I mean, Junkie XL has had a pretty good year, or last year, and with Mad Max Fury Road, which I thought fit the film perfectly. But so, it really comes down to that. It's really, really literally down to that. The film opens with a Beautiful Lie, which starts in typical Inception type style with a bum bum bum. I have to keep saying that, I'm sorry. I'm not sure what other way to describe it. But it settles down after that, and then you have Their War Here, which is basically going back through the finale of Man of Steel, which is obviously seen from Batman's point, or Bruce Wayne's point of view this time. So I won't go through all the tracks here, but the standout tracks are sort of, I would say, the big standout track is Is She With You, which is the Wonder Woman track, which on the vinyl is on side C. The other thing I will mention in the soundtrack is that it has bonus tracks. Now, depending how you feel about bonus tracks, will dictate as to how much you enjoy listening to those bonus tracks after the main score is finished. Now, my feeling on bonus tracks is that you could just treat them as that, and therefore it shouldn't be a big deal. But there's a pure listening experience when I was listening to the soundtrack and listening on, so you're listening through side A, side B, side C, and then the beginning of side D. So basically the soundtrack ends with a part called This Is My World. And that sort of brings the film to a close. Now after that you do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 more tracks that have to be classed as bonus tracks because they're after the film's ended. You've got a Batman suite called Men Are Still Good, and then you've got one which is a long 14-minute suite, and then you've got other tracks as well, which are all pretty much sort of heavy-hitting orchestrated music, I suppose you'd call it, but very, very relying on heavy doses of percussion. Now, my problem with this is that if you're going to have bonus tracks, they are from the film, as much as I can tell, or at least early versions of music from the film. It's much in the same way that Man of Steel, the deluxe edition, has the extra tracks on a second CD. But to me, they still feel a bit superfluous. They don't, after finishing with the final track from the actual film, and then then starting to listen to more music afterwards just feels a bit of a weird experience. Yes, of course, the choice is there as to whether you just stop listening. You can do that, so it's no big deal in that respect. But I prefer really what companies like Intrada or La La Land Records try to do when they release soundtracks, is if they are going to release the full score, they will try to incorporate that music in more or less in chronological order. It opens up the whole debate as to film scores in the old days used to have about 10-12 tracks at the most, and it would be a 35-minute glimpse of the score, because obviously when things were released on vinyl on one LP, then that's all you could have. So it really comes down to your viewpoint on that. Now, what Intrada have done, interestingly, is, of course, is release CDs with sometimes with the full score, and then on CD2 you'd get the album representation of an old score as it was originally released. So you got the choice, and I think that's a great thing that they do. But when it comes to modern day releases of modern films, new films, then I think it's a bit weird to do it in that way of just having bonus tracks at the end, but they're from the film, but they're not fitting in with the rest of the score in the order, if you know what I mean. But maybe it's a personal thing, I don't know. But overall, anyway, where does this leave Hans Zimmer's sort of superhero legacy, I suppose? Of course, with Batman Begins, Dark Knight, and Dark Knight Rises, and then Man of Steel, and now this one. Of course, now Hans Zimmer has said that this is the final superhero score he will do. Whether that remains the case, I don't know. But I can see why he's bowing out. It's almost like he's bereft of ideas now, and I think that this soundtrack probably is a good way to end it. It's a good score for the film, and it is an enjoyable listen on its own in parts. So if you're going to give it marks out of 10, then for the film I'd say a good 8 or 9. As a listening experience, a 6 probably. I would like a bit more melody, or a bit more usage of themes really as the key. But the film doesn't necessarily lend itself to that, perhaps, the way they approached it with Zack Snyder. So it's a bit of a strange criticism, perhaps, and maybe it's just the fan of the classic film composers in my head. Anyway, thanks for listening. That's my review on Batman vs Superman. Try and get the vinyl if you do go for it. It's beautifully presented. It's on red and blue and black vinyl. 3 different colours and 3 different vinyls. And it's a good set to have. But overall, it's worth a listen. As always, I would recommend streaming it first to see if you like the soundtrack before going to buy it. That's what I do anyway. But anyway, that's all for now. Another review for Movie Soundscapes will be coming up soon, and much more videos to come on this channel as well. Post your ideas down below if you've got any ideas as to what you want me to talk about. But other than that, keep listening to those scores, and I'll see you soon. Thanks. Cheers.